Welcome to a new video, friends. There were many requests about the experiences of an Argentine doctor. I'm talking specifically about Julio Picon, a specialist surgeon from Chaco who went through some incredible paranormal experiences. Not only him, but also several of his colleagues. And as I believe we already know, many doctors or healthcare workers go through these kinds of situations, although not all of them dare to talk about it. Please subscribe before we continue, as always. That way you help the channel reach more and more people with each story. Now, let's get to today's stories.
What scientific explanation can you give me? I tell him, look, honestly, there are a lot of things that happen and that you see, and honestly, sometimes it's just like, no. Not only is it not investigated, but it's also treated as a folkloric thing, something that's already been normalized. But obviously this insect has some special meaning. In order to determine, for example, that a patient is obviously at a stage where he is dying and the end is near.
The first one, and perhaps the most well known, is what happened one night in the emergency room. A person arrived. He seemed to be a homeless man. He knocked on the emergency room door and was attended by one of the nurses. She spoke with him, took his information to register him, and then let him into the examination room. This man came because he was having trouble breathing. Apparently he had a cough and a fever. The physical exam didn't provide much information, so Julio asked for an X-ray. The radiology technician who was on duty led the man into the X-ray room. She kindly asked him to position himself on the chassis so she could take the X-ray. And once she was sure the man was in the correct position, she told him not to move, please. That it would only be a few seconds. She took the plate and then went to the dark room to develop it. At that moment, this woman said she felt something, a strange sensation of fear. And she also pointed out a chill that ran through her body. She clearly felt a presence behind her and someone breathing on the back of her neck. She felt that heavy breathing that made her tremble. She quickly left the room, and the surprise was even greater. When the patient had disappeared, he had vanished, and this was impossible to happen. She ran to the guardroom, very scared, and told everyone what had happened to her. No one saw this man leave, but everyone saw him enter. They called the police for security reasons, but they never found him. Despite an extensive search, the man was nowhere to be found. He had vanished. It was exactly 3:15 in the morning. The night went on as usual, except for the impression everyone had because of what had happened. In the morning, when he arrived at his post, the head of hospital security checked the cameras. Julio and everyone present were astonished. You can see this doctor talking and gesturing to nothing, completely alone. Then the same thing happens with the radiologist, talking to this patient who hadn't been captured by the cameras. You could also see how she opens the X-ray room door to invite him in. He was never seen, neither entering nor leaving. Who was that man? They could never find out, and I think they never will. What I'm about to tell you is about a person who worked as a nurse at the hospital. He was a therapist and loved working the night shift. There is a situation that we doctors know very well, which we call the health visit. There are moments when terminal patients in very bad condition improve very quickly, too quickly, and in just a few hours, when normally it should happen gradually over days. The person can speak almost normally with their family, friends, and doctors. I believe it's a kind of farewell to this brief improvement. We already know it, and in almost all cases it anticipates another change, but in this case a drastic decline that ends in certain death. Another sign that anticipates death. Unfortunately, I know it as the fly symptom. Therapy rooms are places where hygiene and safety are very strict. They are completely aseptic places. But despite this, sometimes you can see a big black fly in the intensive care unit. It gets in somehow, and incredibly lands on the sheets of a particular patient. It's almost certain that this person will inevitably die within a few hours. And going back to the case of this person I was telling you about during our shift, we had another sign to know that death was near. His name was Pablo. He was a therapist who confessed to being a gang member. I don't know if this religion had anything to do with what he did, but well, everyone will draw their own conclusions. When a patient was critical, Pablo would come closer, whisper some words in their ear and then say out loud, "I captured their soul for my saint." After this, he would leave a pin under their pillow. A few hours later, that person would die. Nobody liked this situation, and since everyone was talking about it quietly, it reached the nursing department and Pablo was investigated and removed from his position. He was transferred to the vaccination department, where he struggled to adapt initially but ultimately succeeded. At least that's what we thought. Incredibly, after he was transferred, the mortality rate in the intensive care unit dropped. A few months later, we received some horrible news that no one expected. Pablo had committed suicide and we never found out why. Work in the intensive care unit continued as usual. Some patients recovered and left, while others unfortunately did not make it, and that's just how it is. But one night, something extremely strange occurred. I was monitoring a critically ill patient's vital signs. There was little hope for recovery. And at one point the door slammed shut and the monitor showed that he had gone into cardiac arrest. There was no way I could save him. He was using his last bit of strength and this was something we expected. The strange thing was what happened next. When the nurses started unplugging the equipment, one of the nurses called out to me, shouting. When I showed up, they showed me something that made my blood run cold. They lifted the pillow and underneath it there was a pin, just like our former colleague Pablo used to place them. This situation, believe it or not, happened a few more times. I left the clinic sometime later, but from what I know, many nurses didn't want to work there out of fear, which is why that therapy room ended up being closed.
That case had already happened quite a while ago.
A long time ago already.
4 years ago or less. It was about a guy named, he had a tattoo that's very popular here, you know, getting tattoos like that of Gauchito Gil, of San La Muerte. I mean, it has that particularity, you know. So this guy had a tattoo of San La Muerte on his calf and, well, he suffered a burn from the exhaust pipe. And obviously it affected the whole tattoo. I mean, most of the tattoo. And of course I treated everything for him. He gets the wound treated and they put on silver sulfadiazine for the burn, everything, and well. And the boy was very, very upset because he said, "But doctor, is this going to stay like this?" No, this will heal later. What about the tattoo? No, what about the tattoo? Is the tattoo gone? I told him, I mean, the tattoo is definitely gone. There's no way it isn't. And he was upset about it. No, it can't be. It's on the top layer of the skin, I said. And here it blew up. I mean, did the burn affect that? I mean, no, the tattoo is a lost cause. That guy stayed there. He stayed. And honestly, it even seemed sad to me because he sat on the hospital floor and was there like he didn't want to leave. I confronted him again, asking what was wrong with him. And he says, "No, look, what a mess happened to me." And I tell him, "Stop messing around. You can get a tattoo on your other leg. It's nothing." He insisted, saying, "No, you don't understand, doctor. Well, afterwards, with all the movement in the emergency room, obviously the guy disappeared and he was gone. About 2 or 3 hours had passed, and well, we see the ambulance arriving with its siren on, a terrible commotion. He comes in through the mission, through the ramp, the stretcher, and obviously a lot of commotion. Obviously the police, the nurse, the doctors, the mission therapy team. Obviously you look, and when you get closer to the patient's stretcher, I see that actually the patient, the one who had been discharged, or rather more than discharged, the one who left with the burn, and was obviously dead. Almost because he was at the end. And he looks like this. And his leg, where he had the tattoo, let's say, burned, was amputated. I mean, the leg Yeah, but it was traumatically amputated because of the accident. He ended up losing his leg in the accident, and his life was also affected as he passed away.
The truth is that even after many years working in the hospital environment, there's an area I still can't get used to. I'm even a little afraid of it, you know? I'm talking about the morgue. It's a place with an immense negative energy, and it gives you a feeling of suffocation, like the air is so thick you can't breathe. What I'm going to tell you happened during a night shift. Police officers arrived with a 9-year-old boy who had been electrocuted, and despite attempts to revive him, it was useless and he died. It's overwhelming what you feel in these cases. Just imagining it already makes you anxious, but it's part of the job, and unfortunately you get used to these situations. We had this boy's body in a room improvised as a morgue since we were waiting for the coroner's vehicle, and it was very strange that no family member showed up. While we waited, the shift went on as usual, chatting, attending to people, having some mate here and there. But it was around 4 in the morning, more or less, that everyone who was on duty, we heard a tremendous scream, but it wasn't something natural, it was a heart-wrenching scream. And do you know where it was coming from? From the back of the room where the boy was. I think we all felt a chill run from our feet to our heads. Then we heard a clear, loud thud, like something had fallen. There was no other explanation. We ran over there because we thought a family member had come in. When we entered the room, we found the body of this guy and no one else. What was most confusing and filled everyone present with fear was seeing what was uncovered. The sheet that was covering him was thrown to the side, and this was impossible. No one came in, the windows were closed, and so was the door. We stood there for a few seconds looking at the scene, not understanding how it was possible for this to happen. Local media reported that the tragedy happened around 10 o'clock on Friday night, February 3rd of the year, 2017, at the intersection of Passage 27 and Boyo Street in the La Rubita neighborhood in the city of Barranqueras. There is no doubt that paranormal situations are encountered and experienced all the time in hospitals and health centers. Julio Picon surely knows many more, but I have no doubt that these 3 were unforgettable for him and all the staff who accompanied him during those shifts.
A few years ago, a patient arrived at a hospital in a similar way, supposedly. Her aunt said she was kind of possessed and claimed to be protected. For us, it's someone who's not right in the head, or someone who's schizophrenic, or someone who's having a psychotic episode. The girl, well, she was jumping all over the place, screaming, and she wanted to bite the people who were holding her. And obviously, you act rationally, you say, no, this girl, put in an intravenous, let's give her some diazepam to calm her down. And, well, I order them to put in an intravenous. When the nurse approached to insert the intravenous, an overweight girl said to her, the girl suddenly calms down and whispers something in the nurse's ear. And the nurse drops everything and ran out. Another nurse initiates the intravenous and administers diazepam, calming the situation. Then they brought in a pastor, I think. They started yelling, get out of this body, and stuff like that. And of course, we just left them alone there, letting them do what they thought was right. And then they quieted down, and so the girl left. Let's say her family took her away. But the nicest thing about everything that happened was that we stayed like this. We were very impressed by the nurse who locked herself in the bathroom and was crying. Of course, and she said to him, your son, the middle one is now my secretary. One wonders, what does that have to do with anything? It turns out that 10 years ago, the nurse's son had hanged himself. He had committed suicide. Nobody knew about that, not even us, and that girl knew it. How she knew, I don't know.
Thank you for making it to the end of this video. I look forward to your comment to know what you think. I send a big hug to all of you,